Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video we will be looking at factors affecting the accuracy of eyewitness testimonies, misleading information, leading questions, post-event discussion, and anxiety, which you need to know for AQA A-level psychology in the subtopic of memory. I hope you enjoy this video and find it helpful. Let's get started. Misleading information. Misleading information is incorrect information given to the eyewitness after the event, leading questions post-event discussion between co-witnesses people, which may alter their memory or recollection of the original event, making it more difficult to recall accurate information. Eyewitness testimonies are a form of evidence given by a person who witnessed a crime or an event and is later called to testify about what they saw. A leading question is a type of question that suggests particular answer or contains information that prompts the respondent to answer in a specific way. These questions often guide the respondent towards a desired response or answer, rather than allowing them to answer freely. Loftus and Palmer, 1974, conducted a landmark study to investigate whether misleading information, the wording of the question and effects of language, could distort eyewitness testimony accounts. An opportunity sample of 45 university students was shown clips of car accidents and then asked specific questions about what they had seen. There were 5 conditions, only one of which was experienced by each participant, an independent measures experimental design. A critical question was asked about the speed of the cars where the wording varied. The participants were either asked how fast were the cars going when they smashed, hit, collided, bumped, contacted into each other. They found that the words that implied a stronger collision resulted in a greater average estimate of speed from participants. The participants in the smashed condition reported the highest speed estimate, 40.8 miles per hour, followed by collided, 39.3 miles per hour, bumped, 38.1 miles per hour, hit, 34 miles per hour, and contacted, 31.8 miles per hour, in descending order, demonstrating how leading questions could influence memory recall. Loftus and Palmer suggested 2 reasons for these results. 1. Response bias. The misleading information provided may have influenced the answer a person gave, a response bias, but didn't actually lead to a false memory of the event. Therefore, leading questions do not affect memory, just choice for answer. 2. Substitution bias. The memory representation is altered, the critical verb changes a person's perception of the accident. Some critical words would lead someone to perceive the accident as more serious. This perception is then stored in a person's memory of the event. Therefore, question wording actually distorts memory. They concluded that the estimated speed was affected by the verb used. The verb implied information about the speed, which systematically affected the participant's memory of the accident. In a follow-up experiment, 150 participants were watched clips of a multiple car crash. Afterwards, 50 participants were asked how fast were the car going when they hit each other, 50 participants were asked how fast were the cars going when they smashed each other, and the remaining 50 participants were not asked a question about the car's speed, i.e., the control group. 1 week later, without seeing the clips again, participants answered 10 questions, including a critical question: did you see any broken glass? Yes or no. There was none. They found that participants who were asked how fast the cars were going when they smashed were more likely to report seeing broken glass. They concluded that questioning techniques easily distorts memory, and information acquired after an event can merge with original memory, causing inaccurate recall or reconstructive memory. The follow-up study suggested that this effect is not just due to a response bias because leading questions altered the participant's memory for the event, confabulation. Consequently, Loftus and Palmer support the reconstructive memory hypothesis, arguing that information gathered at the time of an event is modified by data gathered afterward. Over time, information from these 2 sources is integrated so that it is impossible to separate them. In effect, we have only one memory. A strength of Loftus and Palmer's study is that the study has real-world practical application. Loftus's Devlin Report, 1976, recommendation serves as a crucial guideline for judges and juries, emphasizing that eyewitness accounts should be corroborated with additional evidence before reaching a verdict. This is particularly important in criminal cases where the stakes are high, and wrongful convictions can have devastating consequences. By educating juries about the potential pitfalls of relying solely on eyewitness testimony, the legal system can work towards minimizing errors in judgment and ensuring that convictions are based on a more comprehensive assessment of evidence. This is a strength because it suggests that the legal system can improve its processes and outcomes by integrating psychological research into courtroom practices. By recognizing the limitations of eyewitness testimony, the justice system can adopt more rigorous standards for evidence evaluation, ultimately leading to fairer trials and a reduction in wrongful convictions. A limitation of Loftus and Palmer's study is that it lacks population validity. The participants were university students, which may limit the generalizability of the findings to other populations. Students are not representative of the general population in several ways. The students are likely to have been less experienced drivers or possibly never even driven a car before and therefore may lack the knowledge of driving skills and may be less confident than an experienced driver would be in their ability to estimate speed. This may have influenced the students to be more swayed by the verb in the question. This is a limitation because it suggests that the findings of Loftus and Palmer's study may not be applicable or generalizable to the wider population, particularly those outside the university student demographic. If the sample lacks diversity in age, experience, and background, it raises concerns about the reliability of the conclusions drawn from the study. A limitation of Loftus and Palmer's study is that the study lacks ecological validity. The study was conducted in a laboratory, which is an artificial setting. The environment would have the atmosphere of a controlled space, which does not accurately reflect real-life situations where eyewitness accounts occur. In everyday life, people witness events in dynamic and often stressful conditions, which can significantly affect their memory and perception. In a lab setting, participants are aware that they are being studied, which may alter their behavior and responses. This artificiality can lead to results that do not translate well to real-world scenarios, where factors such as emotional arousal, distractions, and the presence of other witnesses can influence how individuals recall events. This is a limitation because it suggests that the findings may not be applicable to real-world situations where eyewitness testimony is critical. The controlled environment of the laboratory fails to replicate the complexities and pressures of actual events, meaning that the way participants respond in a study may differ significantly from how they would react in a genuine eyewitness scenario. A limitation of Loftus and Palmer's study is that the study lacks mundane realism. Participants viewed video clips of car crashes, which is an artificial task. The video clips would not have had the same emotional impact as witnessing a real-life accident, and the participants would have been less likely to pay attention and less motivated to be accurate in their judgments. This is a limitation because it suggests that the results may not truly capture how people would react in real-life situations, where the emotional stakes and stress are much higher and therefore the findings and conclusions cannot be generalized and are not applicable to real-life situations. A limitation of Loftus and Palmer's study is that the findings may be affected by demand characteristics. Participants knew they were in a laboratory experiment, which was likely to affect their behavior in several ways, including looking for clues on how to behave, demand characteristics, and wanting to help the experimenters by giving them the results they think they want. Participants could merely be following the researchers' suggestions in both the original round of questions and the follow-up questions. In effect, demand characteristics could be carried forward. As participants remembered being asked about the cars smashing into each other, they were prompted to say that they had seen broken glass in the follow-up study. This is a limitation because it suggests that the participants' responses may not accurately reflect their true memories of the event. Instead, their answers could have been influenced by the expectations set by the researchers, leading to potential inaccuracies in the data collected regarding eyewitness testimony. Post-event discussion occurs when there is more than one witness to an event. Witnesses may discuss what they have seen with their co-witnesses or with other people. This influences the accuracy of each witness's recall of the event, as information, which may be misleading, is added to a memory after the event occurs, reducing the accuracy of the witness's recall. This can cause or result in memory conformity, where individuals' memories become similar to those of others after discussing an event. This can lead to the incorporation of incorrect details into one's own memory, false memory, where a person recalls something that did not happen or recalls it differently from the way it actually happened. Reconstruction, the process by which memories are pieced together from various sources of information. Rather than being a perfect playback of events, our memories are reconstructed using fragments of actual events, combined with our own interpretations, emotions, and external influences. Confabulation, the creation of false memories without the intention to deceive. Individuals who confabulate may fill in gaps in their memory with fabricated details, believing them to be true. This often occurs unconsciously and can be a result of various neurological conditions or brain injuries. Gabbert et al., 2003, conducted a study that explored the phenomenon of memory conformity, where individuals' memories can be influenced by the memories of others. 60 students from the University of Aberdeen and 60 elderly adults recruited from a local community watched a clip of a girl stealing money from a wallet. The participants were either tested individually, control group, or in pairs, co-witness group. The participants in the co-witness group were told that they had watched the same video, however they had in fact seen different perspectives of the same crime and only one person had actually witnessed the girl stealing. Participants in the co-witness group discussed the crime together. All of the participants then completed a questionnaire, testing their memory of the event. They found that 71% of participants who had discussed the event with their partner reported details they had not actually seen but had learned from their partner, indicating that their memories were influenced by the discussion. 60% of participants claimed she was guilty despite not actually witnessing her commit the crime. They concluded that co-witness discussion can lead to memory conformity, where individuals incorporate incorrect information from others into their own memories. They also concluded that repeat interviewing, each time an eyewitness is interviewed, can increase the chance that the comments from the interviewer will become incorporated into their recollection of events. A strength of Gabbert et al.'s study is that there is research to support the study's findings and conclusions. Loftus and Pickrell, 1995, investigated how misleading information could create false memories in individuals. 24 participants ranging in age from 18 to 53 were given 4 stories about their childhood gathered from relatives. 3 of the stories were true while 1 was false, and it included being lost in a department store when aged 5 and an elderly lady rescuing them. Participants were then asked questions on whether they recalled these stories. They found that 29% of the fake stories were recalled by participants believing them to be true and 68% of the true stories were also recalled correctly. They concluded that false memories could be created from suggestion and misleading information. This is a strength because it suggests that the phenomenon of false memories is not isolated to a single study, but rather a broader issue in memory recall that can be influenced by misleading information. A strength of Gabbert et al.'s study is that it has real-world practical application. The study addresses a common real-world scenario where witnesses discuss events with each other, which can influence their memories. This has important implications for the legal system, particularly in how police and legal professionals handle eyewitnesses to prevent contamination of their memories through discussions with others. For instance, the findings suggest that law enforcement should implement procedures that minimize contact between witnesses during investigations. This could involve separating witnesses immediately after an event and conducting individual interviews rather than group discussions. By doing so, the integrity of each witness's memory can be preserved, leading to more reliable testimonies in court. Additionally, training for police officers on the effects of post-event discussions can help them understand the potential for memory distortion, ensuring they adopt best practices when gathering eyewitness accounts. This is a strength because it suggests that the findings from Gabbert et al.'s study have significant implications for understanding the dynamics of memory recall in eyewitness situations. A strength of Gabbert et al.'s study is that it has good population validity. 2 different populations, university students and older adults, were tested, and there was no significant difference found between these 2 conditions. The inclusion of diverse populations enhances the robustness of the study, as it indicates that the phenomenon of memory contamination due to discussions is not limited to a specific demographic. This is particularly important in legal contexts, where eyewitnesses can come from various backgrounds and ages. This is a strength because it suggests that the findings can be generalized across different age groups, reinforcing the idea that the effects of post-event discussions on memory distortion are applicable to a wider audience. A limitation of Gabbert et al.'s study is that it cannot conclude why the distortion occurs. While the study demonstrates a clear link between post-event discussion and altered memory recall, it does not delve into the underlying mechanisms that cause this distortion. For instance, it is unclear whether the distortion is due to memory reconstruction, social conformity and pressures, or the influence of post-event information. Without understanding the reasons behind the memory distortion, the implications of the findings remain somewhat limited. This is a limitation because it suggests that the findings may not fully capture the complexity of memory processes in real-world situations. Without knowing the specific mechanisms behind memory distortion, it becomes challenging to apply these findings effectively in practical contexts, such as in legal settings where accurate recall is crucial. A limitation of Gabbert et al.'s study is that it lacks ecological validity. This means that the findings may not be applicable to real-world situations, as the study was conducted in a controlled laboratory environment. In such settings, participants may behave differently than they would in natural circumstances. For example, the stress and emotional factors present during actual witnessing of an event are absent in a lab. Additionally, the artificial nature of the tasks may not accurately represent how people interact and discuss events in everyday life. The dynamics of post-event discussion, including the influence of relationships, social cues, and the context of the situation, are more complex in real-world scenarios. This is a limitation because it suggests that the results may not be representative of how memory functions in everyday life, particularly in high-stakes situations like legal proceedings. When eyewitnesses recall events under stress or emotional duress, their memories might be influenced by various factors that a controlled study cannot replicate. Anxiety. Deffenbacher, 1983, reviewed 21 studies and suggested that the relationship between anxiety and the accuracy of eyewitness testimony follows an inverted U as proposed by the Yerkes-Dodson, 1908, curve hypothesis. According to this hypothesis, when anxiety is at a moderate amount, it is at an optimal level and produces the most accurate and detailed eyewitness testimony. However, too much or too little anxiety reduces the accuracy of the eyewitness testimony. A limitation of Yerkes-Dodson's hypothesis is that it is too simplistic to explain the impact of anxiety on eyewitness accounts. Fazey and Hardy, 1988, proposed the catastrophe theory, which may provide a more comprehensive explanation for the conflicting findings regarding the effects of anxiety on eyewitness testimony on a three-dimensional scale. This model encompasses performance, physiological arousal, and cognitive anxiety as well. The model posits that as physiological arousal exceeds the moderate optimum level, unlike the Yerkes-Dodson curve, which exhibits a gradual decline, they observed a significant drop in performance. This decline, according to the model, is attributed to heightened mental anxiety and worry. However, distinguishing between anxiety and stress in an individual would be challenging and subjective. This is a limitation because it suggests that the relationship between anxiety and performance is linear, failing to account for the complexities involved in how different types of anxiety can impact eyewitness testimony. Anxiety has been suggested to have a negative effect on recall. Anxiety creates a heightened state of physiological arousal, as a person focuses on the anxiety-inducing and fearful stimuli that a person becomes frozen to the extent in which they cannot pick up on any environmental cues, which prevents a person paying attention and worsens a person's recall. Loftus, 1979, reported the findings of Johnson and Scott, 1976, who conducted an experiment to see if anxiety affects the accuracy of eyewitness testimony and facial recognition. Johnson and Scott invited participants to a laboratory where they were told they would be taking part in a laboratory study and were told to wait in the reception area. A receptionist who was seated nearby excused herself to run an errand, leaving the participant alone. The experiment used an independent group's design, and the participants were then exposed to one of two conditions. 1. Participants overheard a conversation in the laboratory about equipment failure followed by a man exiting holding a pen, no weapon condition. 2. Participants heard glass break and overheard a heated and loud exchange followed by a man exiting holding a paper knife covered in blood, weapon condition. Both groups were then shown 50 photographs and asked to identify the person who had left the laboratory. The participants were informed that the suspect may or may not be present in the photographs. They found that condition 1, non-weapon condition, accurately identified the man 49% of the time, low anxiety, and condition 2, weapon condition, accurately identified the man 33% of the time, high anxiety. They concluded that the extreme anxiety induced by the presence of a weapon narrows the focus of attention to the weapon and distracts a person's attention away from everything else that is happening, weapon focus effect. This impairs their ability to recall other details such as the perpetrator's face, leading to poorer eyewitness identification. A strength of Johnson and Scott study is that there is research to support their findings and conclusions. Clifford and Scott, 1978, found that people who saw a film of a violent attack remembered 40 less items of information than people who saw a less stressful version in a control group. As witnessing a real crime is considered more stressful than taking part in an experiment, memory accuracy may well be even more affected in real life. This is a strength because it suggests that the findings of Johnson and Scott study are robust and applicable to real-world situations. A limitation of Johnson and Scott study is that it breaks several ethical guidelines. Ethical guidelines protect and prioritize the participants' well-being. Firstly, the participants were deceived about the true nature of the experiment, which limits their ability to give fully informed consent, as participants may not have fully understood what they were agreeing to, which undermines their autonomy. The study also lacked protection from psychological harm, as the high anxiety condition involved exposed participants to a potentially distressing situations, where participants witnessed a violent act and saw a bloody knife, which raises ethical concerns about causing unnecessary stress and anxiety. This is a limitation because it suggests that the ethical breaches undermine the integrity of the research, as exposing participants to distressing situations and involving deception raises significant concerns about informed consent and participant welfare. A limitation of Johnson and Scott study is that it lacks ecological validity because the experimental conditions may not accurately simulate real-life scenarios in which eyewitness testimony occurs. In the study, participants were placed in a controlled environment where they observed a simulated crime involving a weapon. However, this setup does not capture the complexity and unpredictability of actual criminal events. In real life, witnesses experience various emotional responses, such as fear and stress, which can significantly influence their memory and recall abilities. The participants may have also anticipated that something may be about to happen, due to the artificial nature of the environment, which could have affected the accuracy of their judgments. This is a limitation because it suggests that findings and conclusions may not be able to be generalized to real-world situations where individuals are confronted with genuine threats. A limitation of Johnson and Scott study is that it may lack internal validity. The participants may have focused on the weapon because they were surprised rather than anxious and scared. Pickle, 1998, conducted a laboratory experiment to investigate whether weapon focus is due to the usualness of an object or the threat that an object poses. 230 participants watched a 2-minute video of a hair salon reception handing money to a man holding either scissors, a handgun, a wallet, raw chicken, or nothing. The participants then filled out a questionnaire related to the receptionist and the man and what he did. The study found that eyewitness testimony was poorer in high usualness. This is a limitation because it suggests that the findings may not accurately reflect real-life situations where the presence of a weapon could evoke genuine fear and anxiety in witnesses. Anxiety has been suggested to have a positive effect on recall. Anxiety triggers the fight or flight response, which increases alertness by widening the eyes and dilating the pupils, meaning the environment can be scanned for signs of danger to allow a person to locate the nearest escape route. Fear sends adrenaline to large muscles which can be called upon to either run away or stay and fight. A state of heightened alertness means that people are able to pick up on a host of sensory and situational cues in the environment, and it is this acute attention to detail which means that eyewitness, EW, anxiety may actually boost memory. Ewell and Cutshall, 1986, aimed to investigate whether the accuracy of eyewitness testimonies is affected by the stress of witnessing a crime, by conducting a field experiment focusing on a real-life incident involving a shooting robbery in a Vancouver gun shop. One person was killed and another person was seriously injured. 21 witnesses observed the shooting and were originally interviewed by investigating police, and 13 witnesses, aged between 15 and 32, agreed to take part in Ewell and Cutshall's follow-up research interview, 4 to 5 months later, which were then compared to the original police report taken right after the crime. In both sets of interviews, the eyewitnesses were asked to give their account and follow-up questions were asked. The researchers asked 2 misleading questions. Half the group were asked if they saw a broken headlight whilst the others were asked if they saw a broken headlight. There was no broken headlight. Half the groups were asked if they saw a yellow panel on the car and the other half were asked if they saw a yellow panel. The panel was blue. The witnesses were then asked to rate their degree of stress on a scale of 1 to 7, as well as being asked if they had had any emotional problems since the event. The researchers collected approximate over 1,000 details compared to the police, who collected approximately 650. They found that the eyewitness testimonies where participants reported high levels of stress were the most accurate even after several months, with all major details of their reports remaining the same and only minor details, including estimates of age, height, and weight, changing. They also found that misleading leading questions had little effect on the participant recall, with 10 of the participants said there was no yellow panel and no broken headlight. They concluded that the level of stress experienced by the witnesses during the incident did not significantly affect the accuracy of their recall, and eyewitness testimonies can be reliable in high-stress situations. The real-life context and the emotional involvement of the witnesses might contribute to the accuracy of their memories. A strength of Ewell and Cutshall's study is that there is research to support the study's findings and conclusions. Christensen et al., 1993, conducted a study involving 110 witnesses of 22 real-life bank robberies were interviewed some time after the robberies. Some of the witnesses had been onlookers or customers in the bank, and others were bank employees who had been directly threatened or subjected to violence during the robberies. The findings were that the victims were surprisingly accurate in their recall of the robbers' clothing and behavior, and that the accuracy was still evident 15 months later. This is a strength because it suggests that high levels of anxiety in situations do not always divert attention away from what is happening. A strength of Ewell and Cutshall's study is that it has high ecological validity. The study was based on a real-life incident, which means the findings are more likely to be applicable to real-world situations compared to laboratory studies. This real-world context enhances the relevance of the results, as it reflects actual eyewitness experiences rather than artificial scenarios created in a lab setting. The use of a genuine traumatic event allows researchers to observe how stress and emotional factors influence memory recall in a way that is more representative of everyday experiences. This is a strength because it suggests that the findings can be generalized to real-world situations, making them more applicable to legal contexts where eyewitness testimony is critical. A limitation of Ewell and Cutshall's study is that it lacks population validity. The study only used 13 participants, which is a very small sample size. This raises concerns about whether the findings can be generalized to a broader population. With such a limited number of participants, it is difficult to determine if the results reflect the experiences and memory recall of a diverse group of individuals. Additionally, the specific characteristics of the participants, such as their backgrounds and experiences, may not represent the general population. This is a limitation because it suggests that the conclusions drawn from this study may not be applicable to other contexts or groups, limiting its overall impact and relevance in understanding eyewitness testimony across different situations. A limitation of Ewell and Cutshall's study is that the findings may be affected by extraneous and confounding variables. Specifically, the witnesses who experienced the highest levels of stress were actually closer to the event, the shooting, and this proximity may have influenced the accuracy of their memory recall. This raises the question of whether the stress itself was the primary factor enhancing their memory or if their closeness to the event contributed to their ability to recall details accurately. This confounding variable complicates the interpretation of the results, as it becomes challenging to isolate the effects of stress from the effects of being a direct witness to the event. This is a limitation because it suggests that the findings and conclusions cannot be applied to other scenarios where witnesses are not as close to the traumatic event, thereby limiting the ecological validity of the findings. Thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more content like this. Bye.